Gurren Lagann can best be described as one giant schizo post that takes the form of original fan fiction written by a teenage adherent to NRX who decided to post it on poll at 3 a.m. in the morning after drinking heavily and speed watching Evangelion, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and a bunch of miscellaneous itchy. Now, if that description sounds like one giant schizo post, then mission accomplished. Because this one is weird. This one is really, really weird, and it bothers me because I can't tell if I like it or not. If it's like genius, or it's horrible, or it's both at the same time. There's a certain level where with postmodernity where you go so far into the postmodern conception it becomes sincere again and becomes completely serious and philosophical. And Gurren Lagann is that. It's like if you were to take the alt right and make an anime about it, this is probably what it would be. Because like literally, you have the Faustian spirit, you have the Nietzschean will to power, you have idealism, you have the development and decline of civilization, cyclical views of history. You also have anime girls with big boobs and anti-material rifles. You have giant mechs that latch on to other mechs. You have a dude whose like head gets cut off and his head becomes a computer. You have a guy who the same villain who has spent thousands of years with concubines and then killing all the children created by them, like really dark shit like that. You have like this evil brainwashing cult that sacrifices people, and you just have all this like insane shit that's thrown together in what kind of feels like a shonen. And of course, this could only be created by one studio. One studio and its descendants are responsible for pretty much every TV show like this, be it Evangelion or Darling in the Franxx or Kill la Kill or any of these other bizarre things that mix extreme fan service with deep philosophical commentary. Now, before we get into the show, I'm gonna say something very cringe. This show actually, I didn't watch that much of it, but it did actually kind of impact the development of my philosophy and kind of my worldview, as I do think it more than just about anything else portrays I call it, so Spangler calls it the will to the infinite. I like that, but I also like the concept of the will of fire from Naruto. So I came up with my terminology for the Western spirit is the infinity will, or the desire to constantly improve, to progress, to become better and more than you currently are. And how I think that is the defining characteristic of both our religion and our culture and just our civilization. So, despite having kind of this indirect philosophical impact on me, I just couldn't really watch the show the first time just because of the sheer amount of like retardation involved with it, the excessive amounts of fan service, the random side tangents, and that sort of thing. It's weird because this show does actually say a lot, both philosophically and psychologically, but it's mixed into just this very juvenile, insane, bizarro art style. Like I said, it feels like a giant schizo pose. So maybe let's just kind of start from the beginning. So we have our protagonist. So we start off with two main protagonists, Simone, although his name is written Simon, but he's pronounced Simone for some reason, and Kamina. So if you go to TV tropes, there's a TV trope called decoy protagonist, and the picture for the decoy protagonist is actually Kamina. Oh, by the way, there's just going to be massive spoilers during this, but most people who watch these reviews aren't actually going to watch the original. So people think that Kamina is the protagonist because he's big, he's flashy, he's cool, he's like your typical shonen protagonist, but he gets killed like halfway through the series, and the actual protagonist is Simone. You also have Yoko, but kind of like with Kamina, she just kind of disappears halfway through the series, then comes back for the big finale. But very much this is Simone's show. He's the main character. Most episodes focus around him. So in the far future, humanity has been driven underground. some sort of collapse happened on the surface, and what remains of humanity lives in little caverns underneath, desperately fighting over the scraps. Simone and Kamina come across a mech that will become known as the Gurren. Or sorry, Gurren is the big guy, the big mech. The small mech is Lagann. I get them mixed up. It doesn't really matter. But they find one and they activate it, and then that calls a whole bunch of other mechs down, and they get into a fight with them. And eventually they get banished from their village. But like, one of the big things is it's very much like kind of a Plato's cave thing, or the hierarchy of the village is just very much content with things being static, them living in this pathetic existence underground. Simon is very much a dreamer. He wants to find old technology. He wants to find the surface. He wants to find something that'll change kind of the wretched existence they're in. And this is kind of the first kind of, I guess, kind of will to the infinite thing we see, where Simone is not willing to accept this pathetic state of affairs. He has this constant need to grow, to change, to improve. They then run into Yoko, who I actually like quite a bit. I think one of the jokes is that she wears like a bikini top and it's extremely revealing. And in the episode where she wears a bathing suit, the bathing suit actually covers her substantially more. And Simone, obviously being a hormonal teenage boy, sees this beautiful redhead. He develops a crush on her, but he gets completely mocked by Kamina, who's like a foot taller than him. And Yoko explains to them that, yeah, there still is an upper world. It's just been kind of blasted to pieces. And there are these creatures called the Beast Men who pilot the mechs, who are preventing humanity from returning to the surface and are periodically culling them. They're trying to keep them down. They're trying to keep them in a pre-industrial state, to repress their infinity will, to stop them from advancing, to keeping them at the, I don't know, whatever the first stage of civilizational development is. And so the next 10 episodes or so revolve around them getting a team together, getting bigger and bigger and more powerful mechs. They run into, I think it's Ruscio? I was just going to call him Russo, who is the son of a cult leader. The cult, who he knows the cult is fake. He knows that the god doesn't exist, but he uses it as a way to cull the weak and to preserve resources within his society. That guy gets exiled and he becomes like Simone's sidekick. And basically a bunch of stuff happens. It turns out that the Beastmen are led by Lord Genome. The fact that his name's Genome will become important later, who appears to be he appears to be a human, or at least humanoid, in contrast to the Beastmen, and his purpose is to keep humanity down and preventing it from progressing and evolving. Anyways, during the war against Lord Genome, Kamina winds up dying, and Simone goes into a complete and total depression, and he's not really sure like what to do, because his strength has been Kamina this whole time. He's his big bro. He's the cool guy. He's the man with a plan, etc. But I think what Simone eventually realizes is he's strong too. He was doing kind of his own thing, and he could do and did a lot of things that Kamina couldn't. And this comes down to like one of the, it's very cringy and funny, but the more you think about it, the more sense it makes. It's the expression, believe in the me that believes in you. So Simone doesn't believe in himself, he believes in Kamina. But Kamina says, if you think I'm like smart, I'm a person who has good judgment. In my judgment, I believe in you, Simone. I think you have the more potential than I do. And so even if you can't believe in yourself, if you believe in me and you believe that I can see your potential, then accept that you have it, if not because of your own self-image, but of the self-image of someone you trust of you. Once again, it's kind of hard to describe, but I do think it makes a lot of sense. A lot of us view ourselves a lot more critically and a lot more harshly than those around us do. We might view ourselves as being stupid or incompetent or incapable, whereas the other people around us, people who we may respect, have a much more positive opinion on us. And so it's saying, look, even if you can't believe in yourself, if there's maybe someone else who you do trust and does have good judgment, who looks at you and sees the good, that's something. And to stretch this metaphor further, I think you can kind of look at this in a Christian sense. Even if you don't believe in yourself, Christ believes in you. Christ believes in you so much that he is willing to be incarnated and die a horrific death and take all of your sins into himself. Because as wretched and as horrible and as sinful and as dank or dark as you may be, and you may see yourself as, Christ sees something in you. The perfect being who created the universe and is without sin does love you unconditionally. And even if you can't believe in yourself, you can believe in God who believes in you. Obviously, I don't think that's what they were going for here, but I just think it is a interesting point. So Simone kind of comes to terms with it. He meets his waifu, Nia, who is the daughter of Lord Genome. We have a massive battle, and they succeed in defeating Lord Genome, defeating the Beastmen, and Earth is saved. Humanity is now free to pursue its infinite potential, and then we come to the time skip. So in the couple years between part 1 and part 2 of this show, most of humanity has come to the surface. They built a massive city called Kamina City. The head of state is Simone, who is now supreme commander. Although he's not particularly interested in governing, he's a man of action. He's a military man. But he's still the leader, and people look up to him. It's interesting because almost immediately, as soon as civilization is reestablished, the people start turning on Simone. They demand more gibs. They demand cuts to military spending, cuts to exploration. They want the entire industry just focused towards consumer goods. No one wants to work anymore. It's basically gone from being a pre-industrial to post-industrial society in the span of a couple of years. There's also, before Lord Genome died, he said, take care that something's going to happen when the total population of humans reaches 1 million. So this is leading to Simone having to send his army to go and conduct a census of the people underground. It's around this time that he proposes to Nia, and her being a weird alien doesn't really understand it, so she turns him down, and he sinks into a state of depression. But what winds up happening is when it hits 1 million, the Earth hits 1 million people, a massive armada of mechs shows up, and the anti-spirals announce to Simone that they're going take control of Nia and announce that they're going to destroy all life on Earth, and to do this, they're going to collide the moon with the Earth. So immediately what happens is, because they're a government and they're Japanese, they're like, how are we going to deal with this? We're just going to cover this thing up. We're going to blame Simone for everything. So his sidekick, the kid he had saved from the cult, immediately launches a coup against him. Has him found guilty, basically for doing nothing. I think it's they're like, well, Simone, you were the one who led us to the surface, and you built this city, and you reestablished civilization, and now it's in danger, and it's your fault. So we're going to execute you, and we're not going to let you pilot Gurren Lagann anymore. And it's just very once again, I think there's a criticism of democracy somewhere in here, and the need for how societies become decadent. Because you have strong men who created good times, and good times created weak men. And then weak men created bad times by getting rid of the strong men. Or something like that. And then we reach kind of the the apex of the schizo posting, where we discover the entirety of what this show's plot actually is. So, in the universe, there is something called spiral power, which is more or less the infinity will given form. It is something possessed by certain species, humans being one of them, that gives them infinite potential. It gives them a desire to constantly seek infinite potential. It allows them to continue to accelerate towards perfection or towards their ultimate form. And there was a fear that there was so much progress and so much growth and stuff like that in the universe that it would eventually create a big bang of sorts, or maybe not a big bang, but a uh there'd become too much energy and matter in the universe, and it would end the universe and complete the cycle, and then the universe would form like a giant supermassive black hole, and everything would be sucked back in towards a big bang. The term for it is it the big crunch? I think it's the big crunch is what would happen as a result of this. So literally the times of prosperity, the times of growth, the times of progress lead to Kali Yuga, lead to the defeat of the universe. And so a group of spirals did not want this to happen, and they sought to prevent the fading of the flame. And they decide they're going to prevent the fading of the flame by destroying most of spiral civilization and preventing them from growing and advancing. As a result, the surviving spiral races have been reduced to states such as humanity having to live under the surface without any access to technology. The idea is to contain the total amount of spiral energy in the universe to prevent it from ending it. Now, whether or not this is called the spiral nemesis. Now, is this actually real? It's never really explained. Some people think it's inevitable because that's just the way of things, and that the spiral desire for change will eventually overcome any impediment in its direction, and it will lead towards them to seek the infinite and the destruction of the universe. There's another kind of perspective that, with careful management, with a subjugation of this desire to prudence and morality, and to self-restraint, that you can pursue this progress, this improvement in a safe manner. There's also the idea that perhaps the spirals will become so powerful and so advanced, they'll be able to overcome their own downfall. Like they'll be so powerful that they'll be able to reverse the singularity. And then other people think maybe the whole thing was just bullshit, and the anti-spiral was just kind of crazy. And so it turns out that there was a spiral army that fought the anti-spirals that was led by Lord Genome. See, Lord Genome was actually an anti-villain this whole time. He had made a deal with the anti-spiral that if he kept the population of humanity under 1,000,000, then the anti-spiral would allow humanity to survive. And by killing Lord Genome and restarting civilization, they breached this accord. So a bunch more stuff happens. Team Gurren Lagann gets back together. Simone and the gang get on like a giant space battleship. They go off. We have like a bunch of insane action-y episodes of them fighting the anti-spiral. We have the traditional Gainax like flashbacks and like dead characters coming back and having philosophical existential conversations and that sort of thing. And ultimately, it seems that Simone's infinity will, his desire for change, his desire to keep the universe moving and to stop the stasis imposed by the anti-spiral, is just stronger than the anti-spiral's desire to keep everything the same. So he ultimately destroys the anti-spiral, who makes him promise to try to prevent the end of the universe in his stead, which he accepts. And so it ends with the battle with the anti-spiral ends with Simone basically becoming a god, becoming the apex of spiral life forms. Now he's presented with the opportunity now. He can revive the dead. He can bring back Kamina. He can bring back all the other people who died. Nia, it turns out, the love of his life, is this unstable, weird hybrid creature. He could probably fix her too, but he decides that there's certain limits that he has to place on himself, and that man was not meant to play God. He wasn't meant to resurrect the dead. He wasn't meant to go past certain limits. And so he decides to put the power aside and let the next generation take over. Because, see, Simon is very old at this point in time. He's past his prime. He doesn't have it in him to lead anymore. He's 23 years old, guys. He's like an old maid. He can't, like, It's time for the younger generation. I mean, the younger generation is like 2 years old at this point in time. So they have to take over and they have to lead the future. They have to be the drill that will reach the heavens. So Simone marries Nia, who disappears after they get married, and he goes off in the wilderness. No longer an emperor, no longer a god. A simple blind Fremen wanders out into the desert to die. Those who had sought to destroy the House of Atreides have failed. For his son would merge with the Anti-Spiral and Lord Genome and become the God Emperor of the universe. No, that didn't happen. That sounds like something that could happen in the show. But that's Dune Messiah and Children of Dune. So Simon just goes off and becomes a hobo or something and wanders the world helping things, helping people. Yoko becomes a teacher. The human civilization continues to evolve. They start to make contact with the other spiral races and travel the stars. And it's kind of a bittersweet ending, because on one hand, Simone is just kind of this lonely hermit wandering the world by himself, having completely like given up on all his old friends, the love of his life defeated, basically alone, and yet at the same time he had accomplished his life's work. Humanity would be able to progress, to grow and change, and to reach the heavens because of his actions. And to a certain extent, you can kind of see him as, the George Washington Cincinnatus figure, where he gained godlike powers and then he realized that he was not, he didn't have the wisdom to fully wield them, and so put them aside. And that's kind of where Gurren Lagann leaves us with this. And I skipped this sounds a lot better and a lot more profound than the way it's played out. Because all this stuff happens and all these themes, like the me who believes in you and the infinity will and cyclical history and all that stuff is definitely present within the show. There's a lot of fan fiction. There's a lot of just mindless beat 'em up action scenes. There's a lot of stuff where they're trying to subvert shonen tropes and that kind of thing. The show is 27 episodes. To be honest, they could probably have cut it down to 24 or even like 21 or 20, and it probably would have been better. Because what they would have removed is like a lot of the kind of the filler and the fluff. It kind of reminds me a lot of Code Geass, because Code Geass is another show that I feel could be like 5 or 6 episodes shorter if they cut out a bunch of the fan service and random side plots and just shit that didn't go anywhere. And if they got rid of that stuff, you'd have a more concise narrative. I also think it's interesting that I would say Code Geass like pretends that it's going to set out to say something big about the world, about politics, about history, about philosophy, and it kind of falls flat in some regards. Whereas this show seems to set out to not say anything and to just be this like fan service action, like kids on cocaine and sugar, but does manage to say something rather profound about the nature of the universe. Regardless, would I recommend this show? I don't know. It's definitely interesting. I mean, I'll give them credit, like they did something different. Did it work? It mostly worked. It's like a 7 out of 10 for me, but it's like 7 out of 10 with like a huge asterisk next to it. Because aspects of this show are like amazing, and aspects of this show are terrible. And it kind of comes up to almost kind of like an uneven 6 or 7 out of 10, where it's not exactly mediocre. And I mean, that's probably best, because the worst thing a show can be is boring and mediocre. And this show is not boring and mediocre. It's bits of genius mixed with just retarded shit. Once again, very much like Darling in the Franxx. This is very similar to Darling in the Franxx. It reminds me of Kill la Kill, although I think this is a lot better than Kill la Kill. I'll review Kill la Kill at some point, maybe. I just don't even really want to think about that show. So that's my review of Gurren Lagann. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to watch it, give it a watch. If you thought I was completely off, post below. But God bless everybody, and believe in the Christ that believes in you.